Welcome back to another edition of the Bebo Knows podcast, or as my wife likes to call it, the Stupid Fucking Podcast. This is your host, Brian Bullock, and with me today I have the one and only Jobo, also known as Handjobs for Ewoks. How you doing today, Jobo?
Pretty good, Brian. Good to be on. I did not ever think that I'd get invited to do something like this, but I guess with sports stopped for almost 2 months now, it was finally time to get the internet's worst shit poster on your podcast.
Yeah, yeah, and I've always seen your profile. Always brag. Like I know you had a post back in the day of something related to my podcast. Now you have like something about a three-time mentionee of the Deep Dive podcast. So now you could add something to your resume.
That will definitely go on first thing after it gets posted.
Excellent. All right. Well, welcome to the podcast. And actually, before we go on, I know I have this listed later on in the podcast, but we had somebody asking about your handle or your name within Twitter, the hand jobs for Ewoks, and
Yeah,
um,
that was Horse on the Shore. So back in college, probably about 2002 or three, maybe. This was before MySpace, definitely. Well, maybe MySpace was around, but we needed a way to organize our tailgate. And I, at the time, thought, why do we need this? And then once we had it, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see the purpose of this. Um, so it was basically my college friends. One of the guys was in IT, and he set up a website for us. And so we had our own website for the tailgate, and there was a main tailgate portion of the forum, and then another one where we'd screw around. Well, I had my normal username Joe Boo, and something happened. One of my buddies, probably Paul Pete, he's one of the admins, and like my best friend growing up. He banned me. Oh, I know what he did. He gave me this avatar that was like the fruitiest avatar possible, and wrote some stuff on my profile that was like not very PC nowadays. And the only way to get rid of it was for me to delete my account and create a new account. And it was kind of one of those things where, in Ghostbusters, where they're like not to think of something at the end, and then Ray accidentally thinks of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Well, this is like the opposite of that. I'm like, I'm going to think of a handle that's so ridiculous that people are going to laugh when they see it. And somehow I just turning words in my mind. I'm like, hand jobs for Ewoks. It just seemed stupid beyond belief. And people liked it. So later, when I created a Twitter account and I realized, oh, people have a separate handle besides their username, I was like, well, let me go with hand jobs for Ewoks. So that's the origin of the name. They weren't even making Star Wars movies at the time. It has nothing to do with that. But people seem to get a kick out of it, and it kind of helps me stand out a little bit. So I'm going to keep it.
yeah, and I should have known to pronounce it Jobu, not Jobo. I
No,
want to
it's
I want to rhyme it in my head, but I should know that it's pronounced Boo, not Bo.
Yeah, it's from the movie Major League. That was my
Yeah,
nickname in the Marine
yeah.
Corps. They one of the platoon sergeants couldn't pronounce my last name, and so he would just call me Joe Boo, and it just kind of stuck.
Okay. Yeah, I should have known. Yeah. But anyways, so from a betting perspective, since you've never been on the podcast, I always have people introduce themselves, whether however humble their beginnings were, or even how humble they are as a sports bettor. Um, initial entry or interest into betting, your most memorable betting moments, sports you enjoy to bet, things like that. So, however you
Sure.
want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. So regardless of what people may think of my humor, I do try to be honest because I'm too old, and I'm unfailingly honest. I don't ever care about impressing someone with some bet that I won. And it also helps that, as we'll discuss shortly, I don't have the time to do all the right stuff.
Cheers. What are you drinking
Cheers.
there?
A beat of Purple Haze. I went to Total
Nice.
Wine like a month ago and was looking at all the beer, and I just got homesick. So I bought like six packs of Abita, and I'm almost out, so I'll probably be going again soon. It just, I don't know about you, like I'm real seasonal with my beer. This time of year, it's starting to get hot in Arizona. We're about to have our first 100-degree day, and I just can't, like all the porters that are still in my fridge and the stouts, I just can't.
Yeah,
It's just too hot. So I've switched into pool beer mode.
I get it. I get it.
Um, so yeah, I betting. So I'm gonna say this right off the bat. Most anyone that follows me knows this. I don't really have any value added tips on what to do, but I definitely know what not to do. Because I've never sat down and make a model. Um, Andy Molitor, if he actually listens this far, he's gonna laugh. Andy and Whale on the Deep Dive podcast, they have all these evergreen pods, and it's all the stuff you should do. Like if you like to bet and it's fun, um, if you don't do all these things, you're just going to be losing money constantly. I don't bet with any credit books. I don't have a local. I just do it all offshore. And throughout my betting career, I've gone 6 or 7 months without reloading at any of my books, but it's rare. Usually, like basketball dies down in the summer, I'll screw with baseball and soccer here and there, but then football comes and there's all these reload bonuses, and it's this never-ending cycle of putting more money into these accounts. And it's because I don't track what I'm betting. I lose track of my futures. Like sometimes I'll realize at the end of a season, you're looking at, crap, who do I have left for the Super Bowl? And you'll
Yeah.
realize it's divisional round of the playoffs, and you accidentally bet 4 times too much on this team that lost last weekend. Um, I'm pretty sure I know who knows what they're doing. If I only tailed and I never live bet, I'd probably break even or make money over time. But I don't do any of that. So you're not going to learn any. Like I don't have a model. I'm not a math guy. I just follow sports pretty closely for a long time, and I find betting on them pretty enjoyable. So my beginnings, probably about 8 years ago, I decided to just try my hand at it. Like most people that have never bet on sports, you think, well, I like sports. I'm a pretty smart person. I'm somewhat of a critical thinker. I bet I could bet on sports and make money at it. The problem with that is betting on sports is fun. And next thing you know, you're betting on all this goofy shit like, oh, it's Belgian third division soccer men under 20 group, and some guy said they all got dysentery from eating at some shitty restaurant last night. So, you load up on them, and then someone gets a red card for dropping an N bomb on a referee or something. And next thing you know, you just lost like a couple $100, and you're like, what happened to the kid who just thought he knew when LSU or the Saints would cover? So yeah, anyway, I've been betting about 8 years, and it's fun. And we'll probably, I don't know if we'll cover this later or not, but I actually quit about 3 weeks before all the sports got shut down. I finally cashed out of all my books, and just because I didn't need the money, but because the money was there, I'd see stuff on Twitter, and next thing I know, I just spent 30 minutes trying to find the best odds on something that I really don't give a shit about. And it's like, I got too much to do to be spending time on this. So I cashed out, and it's been nice having my personal time back, is I guess what I could say.
Sure. So even if there was sports going on right now, you wouldn't be betting on basketball, is what you're saying.
That's what I don't know. Like I quit and then sports stopped. So would I have gotten the itch again? My goal was to see if I could make it through the NCAA tournament um, without betting on it, at least the first weekend, just to actually enjoy the games again instead of like sweating the live lines
Yeah.
when I should be watching basketball with my friends. So being that it's been a couple months, if sports was back right now, one of my favorite times of year is the NBA playoffs. So maybe I would have put money back in or not by now. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, that's fair. I think I think we've all gone through our like phases of quitting something and then we end up
Yes.
right back to it. Um, so yeah, we won't cover that later since you kind of covered that pretty well.
Okay.
So so going back to your roots, we could see that you're wearing the LSU jersey. That looks like Sugar Bowl 2004, I think.
Yeah, it's from the first championship we won with Saban,
Okay.
the Sugar Bowl versus Oklahoma. It's a
Okay.
Joseph Adai jersey.
Okay. Nice.
I don't know if you
Okay.
do you remember him on the Colts?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually on that Super Bowl team. Peyton Manning won, but I think he had gotten hurt. He wasn't the primary running back in that game.
Yeah. I don't remember if it was like I remember Dominic Rhodes, but I don't know if that was before or after Dominic Rhodes. Yeah.
Yeah, there
I don't
was
know.
slight controversy because the running back should have gotten the MVP, but they gave it to Peyton. But really, the MVP was the Colts defense got to play against Rex Grossman.
Yeah.
But there was really no one that stood out in that game.
Yeah.
Oh crap! Yeah, you probably remember that game really well.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
actually, you're a Niners
I'm a
fan.
Niners fan, but I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
but watching, but you know, you watch Super Bowl parties with fans of a team, and yeah, of course, the Hester started that Super Bowl off. But so anyways, with living in the South, you lived in the South for a while. You said a third generation LSU grad.
Yep.
So for somebody who lives in the South, or I should say somebody who doesn't live in the South, please describe what the college atmosphere is like in the South. You know, whether it be at LSU or any venue that you've gone to. Like, paint the picture of your average Saturday on a September or October fall afternoon or evening.
Yeah. So I moved to Baton Rouge in 2001, but even growing up, just I would watch LSU every Saturday. One of my earliest memories of finally being interested in sports was watching um, LSU play Syracuse in a bowl game, and I think 1987, 88, um, with my grandpa and my uncle. My grandpa was the first one in our family to graduate from LSU, and it was just kind of part of growing up where I did in South Louisiana. Like, you just grow up and you watch LSU on Saturday and you watch the Saints on Sunday. But when I moved to Baton Rouge, my friends were all big into tailgating, and that was really when I first started tailgating was 2001. And I'd get there like at 11 in the morning for an 8 o'clock game, and they'd be making fun of me, like, "Where the hell you been all day?" I'm like, "Dude, like I don't get up early in the morning," but they'd already been drinking for 2, 3 hours.
Jesus Christ.
So for our tailgate crew, we got to the point when I left Baton Rouge in early 2008. Uh, we would have to go Friday afternoon about 4 o'clock. They have rules and they change every year because they're always trying to balance things between tailgaters and the needs of the campus. Um, if you want to set up a tent on LSU's campus because you're tailgating, obviously you have to have a license and have paid, to set up, but you can't set your tents up till 5 o'clock on Friday. So we would load up. We had a trailer that we paid for. It would just stay parked at someone's house. The 1% Skips 1% Club was our tailgate crew, still is. We had the 1% Club trailer at my buddy's house. We towed it over to campus, and then usually about half dozen of us would at least go and set the tents up to kind of stake out where you're going to be. And then you leave the trailer there locked up. First thing in the morning, usually about 7 o'clock, first people show up, start unloading the trailer. We'd have our kegs. We had a drink machine. We actually had an old Coke machine that we had rigged to dispense both beer and jungle juice
Oh no,
through
jungle
the
juice.
dispenser.
Oh no, jungle
Yeah,
juice.
because ladies don't want to drink
Oh,
Bud Light all day, so we'd hook up the jungle juice for them and
now
people that just didn't like beer.
was it
And
the
it's
so was
basically
it sorry to interrupt, was it the jungle juice with Everclear or I don't know if there's other ways to make it. I know that in
our
at you
formula. The last time I made it, you'd have when we used to make it in the Gatorade containers, like the the giant orange containers that the construction workers use to put water in.
Yeah.
So in one of those, you have three of the big plastic tubs of the pre-made Kool-Aid mix,
Okay.
um, maybe a bottle of lemon juice, 2/5 of Everclear, or maybe it was like 1/5 of Everclear, a fifth of rum, a fifth of vodka, and maybe a second fifth of rum. I mean, you want to use some Everclear, but you don't want to use too much because you
Yeah.
don't want people passing out at like 3 p.m. and puking in the game and whatnot. But yeah, we were pretty serious about it, and we drank a shit ton. There are a lot of games where you had a ticket, but the tailgate was rocking, and you're like, "Do I really want to leave the tailgate to go in the game?" But you would sometimes go into the game to sober up because you knew if you stayed at the tailgate through the whole game, you'd be shit faced by the time the people left the game and came back. So yeah, it was always a delicate balance, especially once I moved away and I'd go back for like one tailgate a year and I wasn't used to drinking like that anymore. But yeah, Saturdays in Baton Rouge for game day, the whole campus, you might have like 130,000 people tailgating. Uh, you have people driving in later just to go to the game, but even during the game, even if Tiger Stadium has 100,000 people, there's still 30 or 40,000 people tailgating outside. It's an excuse to have a giant party, and then in the middle of it, your favorite football team plays. Hopefully, you win, and either way, you're going to get shit faced even more after the game's over. So it's more of a giant social experience.
Sure. Did you take your tailgates on the road? Did you go to any rival games? Like
Um, I I was pretty poor in college. I didn't go to maybe as many games as I should have, but it basically would have just been all on a credit card because most of
sure.
my friends had graduated college by that point, so they weren't trying to pile like 69 dudes in one room.
Nice.
But I did go to an Auburn game, I believe in 2004 or five. It wasn't that long after we won the title. Jamarcus Russell was the quarterback, and that team was loaded with talent, and we scored 3 points. There was some questionable home reffing, as there is in most SEC games. I think we lost to Auburn 3 to. It was something. It was a god awful game to watch. We kept getting in the red zone, couldn't score. We had a couple of missed field goals, but we lost something like 3-14. And I remember we were walking around after the game, and this car full of Auburn students drives by real slow with the window rolled down. There's like six of us just walking, kind of hanging our heads because we just lost. And the guy yells out the window, "Nice field goal, fags!" And I was just like, "Wow." I don't know. It's for some reason that's just stuck in my head all these years later. I was like, 14 years ago. And I was like, yeah, he's right. We got one field goal with Jamarcus Russell at quarterback and probably 20 NFL players on our team, but that's how it goes sometimes. But
Yeah.
Auburn was fun. Auburn's a little cow town in the middle of nowhere. So it's one of those campuses where there's nothing but the campus. There's a few little bars and restaurants outside of the campus, but the whole town of Auburn is the school. But the
Okay.
tailgate was pretty fun. All the people were pretty nice. You always hear these horror stories about different fan bases in the SEC being jerks. And other than when Florida would come to Baton Rouge, most of the fan bases, even the Bama fans, were pretty good.
Yeah.
Florida, I don't know what the deal was. Maybe it was just the ones I met, but almost every time we played Florida, especially if they'd win, the fans were just assholes after the game. I'm like, dude, what more do you want? You won the game. Why don't you just enjoy your night out in Baton Rouge? But anyway, the Auburn fans are pretty cool. If I had to pick my poison between Auburn and Bama, I pick Auburn all day. I can't fucking stand Bama. Um, the only other game I went to is Mississippi State, and that was sad. The joke in the South is that Starkville, they call it Stark Vegas.
Okay.
because it's like, just to be ironic, because Starkville, they're just not much, man. And I think there were more LSU fans tailgating that day than there were Mississippi State people. It was crazy.
Hmm.
That was 2007. That was the year we won the title, and I think we beat them like literally 49-0. It was pretty bad, but I mean, the fans. I guess they didn't have anything to be aggressive about, but they were fine. But I haven't been to. I want to go to Ole Miss. I don't ever want to go to Florida. Florida, the tailgating rules are all screwed up. Um, the way Florida's tailgates are, most of them happen on private property, like on people's houses.
Hmm.
And from what I've heard, the cops will wait for you to step off of the grass onto the sidewalk, and they'll ticket you for drinking in public and stuff like that. And I just don't want to be drinking in an environment where I have to be worried about getting hassled by the cops. I'm already in enemy territory, so I'll probably never make it down to Gainesville. I've heard Bama's fun. I should probably go one of these days. Maybe now that we won a title again, the pressure will be off, and I won't have to worry about being stressed out, because it's stressful, man. My wife makes fun of me every summer. I'll have these stress dreams where I'm like living through an LSU football game, and it's always us playing Florida or us playing Bama, and like we keep fumbling the ball. Or I don't know if you ever have stress dreams about football or sports at all, but it's strange. I have stress dreams, so maybe now I can rest easy this summer as hopefully football season approaches again.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we play. What do you what is your gut feeling about that? Because that's a question I ask every guest since the virus has broken out. What do you think? Like, I mean, obviously you're just like everybody else where you don't know, but what is your gut feeling?
Yeah, well, so I'm going to preface this by saying I'm the same dipshit that literally like 3 days before they canceled the NCAA tournament and the conference tournaments, I was like, there's no way they're going to cancel the tournament. So, with that in mind, I don't see any way the SEC is not playing football this fall. It means too much to the economy, too much to the state. Unless once states start opening up again, there's some sort of second wave where even more people are getting killed, and things get really crazy. Unless that happens, I can't see there not being football. You just, the economy's already going to be in the shitter this summer. I don't think you can continue that for the rest of the year. What does that look like? I don't know. Would they actually go so far as to play in empty stadiums? Probably not. But I just, September is a long way away.
It
Maybe
is.
they cancel all the opening week games, all the neutral site games. Maybe people that are opening up with they're playing, Southwest St. Mary's School for the Blind and Retarded. Uh, if they can't, maybe they cancel those games the first week or two, start a week or two later. But to cancel the whole season, I just don't see it.
I mean, it'll be tough. I know on the podcast last week, Seth was talking about like how much college depends on its in stadium revenue versus NFL, which is mainly TV revenue. So that's another part that plays into it. So I know all I know is if college football doesn't get played, there's going to be a lot of a lot of shit going on with college sports in general. Like it's just going to be a domino effect. Like you're gonna see some sports fold, or I don't know. It's they depend on that revenue so much, the football revenue for most schools.
Yep.
So as far as the 2019 season, um, when did you sense that it was going to be a special season for you?
Um, I think when we beat Bama, because every year we've had good teams in recent years. We hadn't beaten Bama since 2011, which was the year that we ended up playing them the second time in the title game, which is like the worst football game I've ever seen in my
Oh
life.
God,
Um, we hadn't beaten them.
I bet the over of that game. By the way.
Really nice. I had a guy at work before the playoff, or well, there wasn't a playoff then, before the championship game was announced. And he knew I was a big LSU fan. So he's asking me, he's like, who do you want to play? Do you want to play Bama? Do you want to play Oklahoma? I said, there's no one, I'll play anyone but Alabama because the offense, you know, Les Miles had really super predictable offenses, which is the whole reason why he got fired. And people at the time said LSU's crazy for firing him. But, we had been watching all the games. It wasn't getting any better. But at the time, LSU's offense had been getting worse and worse week by week. So we played Bama. We won 9-6, the quote unquote game of the century. And then we were down, I think 14-0 Arkansas at home 2 weeks later. Honey Badger returned a kick. I think he returned a punt for a touchdown. And then that kind of sparked the offense because we were just going 3-and-out before then. We played Georgia in the championship game. And the same thing, we couldn't get the offense started. Honey Badger, I think, had another either a kick or a punt return for a touchdown. But I was like, if Bama gets a second shot at us and we're running the same offense and Jordan Jefferson's still under center, we're going to get annihilated. And sure enough, we did. So this year, I was like, look, I'm not going to believe anything until we play Bama. And I remember, I don't know if it was Joey Knish or who, but there were some guys that I respect that were like LSU money line. I'm like, LSU money line, I can see taking +6, but I don't know, man. And if you watch that game, I know the final score, I think we maybe won by 6, but it was never that close. Every single time Alabama cut it to one score, we would just go and score a touchdown at will. And that was the one thing we could never do against them. We got shut out last year. We've been averaging probably less than a touchdown against them for quite a while now. So once we beat Bama, I'm like, I guess this is not a mirage. I just kept waiting for that one game where the offense would stall or wouldn't quite work. And it never really came other than the Auburn game. I think we scored 30 in the Auburn game, 30 or 23, something like that. We could just score at will. And, Clemson had kind of been living dangerously all year. I think if Clemson had lost to Bama last year, it would have been a different story. But you take college kids off of a championship, it's really hard the next year to come back and play as hard as you did the year before. And I think, Clemson looked really lackluster the first several weeks, and they picked it up towards the end, but they weren't the same team as they were last year whenever they blew out Bama. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm the I grew up Saints fan. I'm always pessimistic. I always think the worst is going to happen. So until we got up in that third quarter double digits, I'm like, I was like, what's going to happen now? How are we going to screw this up? And we didn't, man. That was one of the best start to finish runs I've ever seen from a football team.
Yeah, and I would have to say, like, so we were on our cruise at that time, so they were showing that on the big screen at by the pool at the cruise, and I don't know, it seemed mostly LSU, but there was still some Clemson fans, but I was definitely rooting for LSU. There's something about Dabo Dabo. I don't know.
Yeah, Dabo.
He something about him that rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Well, here's the thing. Probably, I'm pretty sure LSU plays players. So does Bama. So does. Mm-hmm. And by the way, how Nick Saban has escaped any tinge of controversy with that, it's pretty remarkable.
It is.
I'm going to assume it has something to do with Bama's such a moneymaker for the TV networks that when stuff comes up, it gets squashed pretty quick. But, anyone watching this, I'm not saying Bama's dirty or dirtier than LSU. There is no fucking way Clemson isn't paying their players a shit ton of money. They were a joke up until like 2009 when Dabo took over. And then all of a sudden they're getting the best 5-star recruits in the country. And God bless them. They do a lot of smart stuff. And maybe Dabo's a good team building guy you want to play hard for. But he he talks up a lot of religion and doing stuff the right way, and I'm pretty sure they aren't. Now, God bless them. Like, I'm not taking anything away from them. They're probably no more dirty than anyone else, but it's like the Ole Miss thing. Ole Miss all of a sudden is getting all these 5 stars, and then because no one gives a shit about Ole Miss, like they were a sacrificial lamb to the media once the controversy started building, and then Houston Nutt being the biggest fucktard in the world. Like, how do you not have a burner phone for, you like to bang hookers? Well, great. I can understand that. I'm a red-blooded American, but goddamn, man, get a fucking burner phone. You're making $69 million in the last decade. Get a second phone, idiot. Jesus, how hard is that?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, Clemson, I don't know. To me, they just don't have the pedigree of some of the other schools. And they're playing in a shit conference. It's the Bobby Bowden model. Bobby
Yeah.
Bowden stayed in the ACC because he knew, well, all I have to do is run the table in my shit conference and beat Florida, and I'm in the national championship game.
Yeah.
Florida State, I think in 1991 or 92, was invited to join the SEC, and Bobby Bowden declined for that reason. And I think we took South Carolina instead. But they get a free pass every year. They should have had at least one loss this past year. That's my opinion. Would it have changed anything? They probably still make the playoffs, but they have such an easy road every year. I'd like to at least see the other teams in the conference step it back up. If Florida State can get back where they were and at least have one other surprise ACC team worth of crap once a year, that would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess you described maybe why I don't like Clemson. I mean, I think it's all Sweeney for me, but yeah, I was rooting for you guys, and
Well, I appreciate it, man.
so with Burrow, do you like once NFL comes back around, are you going to be following his career pretty closely, or should I say, do you follow LSU careers pretty closely once they make the pros?
Yeah, I try to. I aside from someone like Cecil Collins, who got for 30 years for breaking into this chick's house and watching her sleep with another dude in the bed. Aside from players that do shit like that, like, yeah, I always root for my LSU players, even if I hate the Falcons, I hate the Bucks. But if they're not playing the Saints, I want them to do well. So yeah, I'll be looking forward. The last LSU quarterback to do anything in the NFL, I don't even know, man. It's been so long. Matt Flynn had literally one good game. Zach Mettenberger was shit. Jamarcus, biggest bust of all time. It's just been a really long time since any LSU quarterback has done anything in the pros. So, yeah, I'll be watching the Bengals this year, and hopefully he does well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I hope so too. He seems like a good dude too, so it seems easy to root for.
Yeah,
So
I do want to say this about Burrow. I know not a lot of people were watching LSU last year. I didn't know this guy from Adam. I knew when we got him. I'm asking my friends back home because they follow recruiting way more, and they're like, yeah, we think he can be pretty good. And so last year when he was starting, he was definitely better than any of the guys we had in recent memory. And by the end of the year, when we played Central Florida in the PlayStation Bowl up in Glendale, which I actually got to go to, there are a lot of other recent LSU quarterbacks that would have lost that game. Central Florida was up big early, and then I think we fumbled a kickoff. They were up like 14-0 with the ball in the red zone. And he took a bunch of big shots in that game, and he just calmly led us back. He's got poise, he's got leadership, and I just like the way the guy plays football. I did not ever in a million years think he'd win the Heisman, but I think he has a chance to do well. I don't know much about the current Bengals offensive staff. I know their head coach. Isn't their head coach some guy who basically briefly cupped Sean McVay's balls and then got the head coaching job? But it's one of these situations where isn't he the head coach and the offensive coordinator? And he really should be doing one of the two, not both.
it sounds right. I know that he was like an offensive dude. Because
Yeah, he's an offensive dude. Maybe he shouldn't be coach the team. The Bengals were not good. They were not led well from a head coaching position last year. So I just hope they at least put him in positions to succeed because they already got rid. I mean, we knew they were getting rid of Dalton, but I don't want this dude to be crushed by the pressure with that failing ass franchise in that miserable state. And then it's like, well, oh, Joe Burrow sucked. It's like, well, did he have the support systems to succeed? I hope he at least has a fighting chance.
Yeah, the thing that I realized, like in the recent years, more so than I did in any other time in my life, is that is how much the success comes from the top. Like, if you have a shitty owner, there's a very good chance that they're gonna fuck everything up below that. So, like, they may have drafted the best player in the draft, but I don't, you know, I don't like his immediate chances of impact just based on the franchise. Nothing to do with him, just the fact that he's on the Bengals.
Yeah, he's on the Bengals, and they haven't been good. And I just hope he survives this season without too much scar tissue.
Yeah, and didn't his is AJ Green still with them? I've lost track of the free agents. Is he?
I believe he is still with them. They still have Joe Mixon. Tyler Eifert seems like has a compound fracture of every bone in his leg like twice a week. So I don't know. That dude should retire, man. I don't know who else they have right now, but
Yeah.
like I couldn't name their second best wide receiver. I have no clue who the Bengals other.
I know they have Tyler Boyd, who's decent. I just remember from fantasy, but
yeah, sure.
But yeah, anyways, all right. So let's segue into everyone's favorite topic, gambling Twitter. So when did you start on Twitter? And like, how were you introduced to the gambling side of Twitter?
Uh, so I listen to a ton of podcasts. I have for a long time, and I used to read a lot of sports articles. And all these writers were on Twitter. The people on the podcast would be like, "Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter." And so I'm like, "Well, it seems like Twitter is something that I might enjoy." So I make a Twitter account, and I don't know how it happened, but at some point I realized, oh, there are people that are just giving out gambling picks on Twitter. It never occurred to me that this thing was out there. And I was never on like covers or anything. I was never on Reddit. Like I only last couple of years I started using Reddit, but I don't gambling Reddit. Like I just don't give a shit. Like I've got enough of that with Twitter. So,
Yeah.
but I started like following different guys and just kind of like whenever they'd go on podcasts, I'd listen to those, or if they'd post articles, I guess just trying to learn more about what to do and how like the prospect before you get into this, you honestly think like, oh, there are all these guys. There's, Fat Neck Freddy, Las Vegas winner, 69 years in a row, and it's just some like god awful fat fuck who probably goes outside 1 hour a year, but he's got this NFL lock of the century for only $100 or whatever. You just think that there's all these people that are like super successful at it just because they're in like a newspaper or on a radio show or have a podcast. And then the more you dive into it, like you're like, oh, that most of those people are fake or scammers or dishonest about their record. And the actual people the pool of people that can do this for a living is much smaller than I thought. And most of them are somewhere tweaking a model rather than spending 12 hours a week doing radio. Yeah. But when I first dove into it, I thought, oh, okay, well, all you have to do is get, free tips from these people. And then, you'll have a winner on the Monday Night Football game or whatever. And over time, I realized, oh, that's not the case at all. And your podcast, I've been listening to for probably maybe since the first year you were doing it.
Okay. So
some of your podcasts with people
like 5 years then? So like I think it was like 5 years or 6 years. I forget. I think I started it. Trying to remember the year that my grandma passed away. That was the first one that I did right around that time. So that was like 5 or 6 years ago.
But yeah, I remember like I I actually, this is funny. Most people wouldn't admit this. I remember back in the day, I thought that Fezzik was like a real sharp guy in a winter, and I'm like, why is this Twitter guy Groovin Mahooven always trolling poor Fezzik? Like, doesn't he know he's trying to give out? And this dude was giving out like WNBA first quarter spreads and shit, just trying to find an edge. And I think I'd actually blocked Grooven. I'm like, man, this guy just needs to stop trolling everyone. And little did I know he was trying to do me a favor, but I was too stupid to realize it. And then you had him on your podcast, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm an idiot. Like, I think I don't know if I was still following Fezzik to that point, but there were some other people who were like, yeah, that guy's a fucking moron. I'm like, And so, but it was through listening to podcasts like that, you finally realize when you listen to someone who knows what the hell they're talking about, like, oh yeah, I don't know shit. Like, yeah, I watch sports and I think some things, but you don't know enough to consistently beat any one sport.
Yeah.
But over time, I'd follow people and I like to bust balls. That's like my thing. Some people find it annoying and block me, but over time, like a few people would follow me. Like some of my earliest big follows were Spreadopedia. Followed me pretty early on. I had like maybe 24 followers. MLB Model, I think, first got me over like followers. And as people started to follow me, I followed everyone that I thought was either interesting or had good information. And I just started to dive more and more into it. Now I think you came from Covers and Seville, right?
The Covers, I wasn't on there too much. My initial dive into Twitter was in 2011. I remember exactly where I was at when I created my Twitter account. I was in Vegas with my buddy Tom, and it was during the Mavs Heat finals.
2011.
Yeah, 2011.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so
2011.
I had just created an account, and I think we caught 2 games in Vegas. I think our trip was like 4 or 5 days, and I remember creating a Twitter account, and I think it was mainly a few friends that I knew. I think I might have followed Bill Simmons. I think everyone does at the start. Until you realize like, oh no, I just unfollowed that shit. But, but like that was my introduction, and I followed some people from Covers. Like the names I remember off the top of my head are Capono for 3. And,
Yep, I still follow him.
And Kalen Totals, I think he's changed his handle on Twitter. But I followed some guys from Twitter or from Covers. I wasn't active on Covers, but slowly but surely, I don't even know how I got wrapped up in it. I wasn't looking for picks myself. I don't think I was, but. Like the first big gambling thing I remember from Twitter was that Sarah Phillips story. Does that ring a bell?
Which one?
It was she was a chick on Covers that had. I don't remember the entire story, and I thought it was a much better story when it happened than it actually was. But it involved some chick named Sarah Phillips who was like writing for ESPN, but like. She was showing like different pictures of herself, like representing herself differently, and like, there was some fraud in between, like where I don't know. It's definitely.
I vaguely remember some of that, but not enough to tell the story.
Yeah. I actually had to look it up, and once I looked it up, I was like, I don't even like it. At the time, it was such a big thing, and that was like right around the time where the Manti Te'o shit was happening. When Twitter was a lot more innocent, like when it wasn't such a crucial part of like our historic like background, like the virus or like political shit, like however whatever side you're on, there's but yeah, that was my introduction to it. And like I don't even know how I got to doing the podcast. I know I was doing it with Hustle Double, who's got a different handle now. I don't know if you remember that handle
Right.
at all,
Yes.
but that's kind of how I got introduced to the podcast side of things. And I wouldn't mind doing this more regularly once sports come back up, because I think my new job lends itself better to the time. But as far as like the Twitter part goes, yeah, I just kind of stumbled into it, to be honest. Like I was
So
never a big.
was it your idea to start the podcast, or was it like both of you were like, hey, let's do a podcast together, and you just ended up being the one to keep hosting it after
Yeah,
he stopped?
I think, yeah, I don't remember how it came to be my thing, but yeah, we were collaborating on a bunch of stuff, and yeah, it was just a bunch of bullshit, trying to kill time in the Chicago apartment, and you know, nothing better to do. So
Yeah, you know what though, man? It takes like I've always admired you. I've been following you forever now, but like because I always have these ideas, and then like a week later, I think my idea is stupid. Whether it's work or my personal life, I'm like, man, like that's why even bother? Like, who gives a shit? Like even being on a podcast, like yeah, I've got people I've talked to every single day for like 3 or 4 years now on Twitter. I assume we're friends. I assume that I'm more funny and easy to get along with than a dickhead. But you don't really know, and you always and I'm like what would my podcast bring value to anyone, or even being a guest on a podcast? Like I thought long and hard after you asked me. I'm like, I mean, I've kind of always wanted to do it, but I don't know if later people are going to go, why would I listen to that? That's stupid. That's just that guy that makes stupid fucking jokes in response to everyone on Twitter. But like you just go out and you create your podcasts, and most of them are pretty damn entertaining, you know? Like you just are like, throw this out there. It just takes to create something on your own. And you're doing it even during the shutdown. I listened to that brewery podcast you had a couple weeks ago
yeah,
twice now.
oh,
It's just like I really like podcasts. I like listening to people talk about interesting things. So, kudos to you for keeping it going. And I think that you've been getting exposure for people that it's kind of cool for people to come on and tell their story. Like Ed Miller Poker. I keep meaning to look that guy up on Twitter. That was a pretty interesting episode. Like I was out riding my bike. I'm like, I don't know who the hell this guy is, but he's on Brian's podcast, so he must at least be cool. And it was a really interesting. I'm like, holy shit! I didn't know people were out there doing that.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed the podcast, and kudos to you for just going. Fuck it. I'm going to set aside a couple hours and knock out this podcast, and maybe people will listen, maybe they won't, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to go. I'm going to go create something instead of just. It's very easy to sit back and not create anything and just shit on everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's ironic me saying that because I know that's kind of my gimmick, but I don't know. Like I really admire that. So
Well, I
kudos to
appreciate
you for
it.
keeping it going.
I appreciate it, and it actually part of it is my like I have a writing background too. Like I'm interested in writing, so the podcast outlines that like the one that you saw, like
Yeah.
I could write that in like 5 or 10 minutes, and it seems like I put like a lot of work into it, which I did. But I just have these ideas that just kind of come to me based on just the person that I know I'm talking to. So. So to steer it back to you, because I don't want to be the focal subject.
Sure.
So as far as your favorite, do you have favorite gambling Twitter memories like in your time that you've been on here that like either small tweet threads or like just stories in general, or people that have like people's stories that have like amused you more than others?
Yeah, I guess election night when Carbon finally got perma banned for getting all these news outlets to run with his story about Trump winning Florida. Was it Trump or Clinton? I can't remember. But that shit used to crack me up, man. I miss Carbon. Hopefully he's out there listening somewhere. When Ghost Fade Killa had the baseball player DMing him for baseball picks.
Oh, Zach Kozart, yeah.
Yeah, Zach Kozart. That
Yeah,
was
I remember
epic.
that.
Wow, nice. This man, damn, you got enough beer, son?
Oh yeah, yeah. I bought like like close to like 40 something beers last week at Three Floyds Brewing in Indiana. So I'm like pretty well stocked up. But
Yeah,
at the same time, we're going to Wisconsin tomorrow to buy more beer
that's funny.
because we're bored out of our fucking minds. And it was
Yeah, I've
actually
been drinking a ton of beer lately. It's because it's like, well, I ain't driving nowhere tomorrow,
yeah,
so
it was actually my wife's idea to like drive to Wisconsin to get me beer. I'm like, oh,
hey, yeah,
okay,
if you, yeah, as long as she's not later and be like, why'd you do that? That was stupid. Like anytime my wife has this thing lately where she forgets that we watched a movie, and it's a movie that I'd rather watch again anyway. So I'm like, okay, I uh I still have DVD Netflix subscription,
yeah,
which is clutch because they have everything. So like I think it was Sunday night, she was looking up someone's IMDb. She's like, "Did we ever watch The Outsiders?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, I don't remember that." I'm like, "Fuck that." So I popped it at the top of
okay,
my DVD queue. So we're gonna watch The Outsiders again. Um, but anyway, so other gambling Twitter memories, probably all the times. The stupid Tweety Dime shit. I have a folder on my work computer because that's usually where I see this stuff. All the times Tweety Dimes has said crazy shit, and I've been blocked by that guy for like 7 years, so it's always someone else sending a screenshot. Um, but the time that so I guess 2 years ago now, maybe three, somewhere during the middle of the summer, he had to go into hiding because, from what I understand, the huge asterisk, like I don't really know what happened, but I guess his sister went on Facebook and said, Christopher Jalen is in hiding. He owes some guy some money. We can't find him. And so he went MIA for a while. And there was some other guy that took over his Twitter account for a while. And you could tell because it wasn't like the tweets weren't stupid enough to be tweety.
yeah.
Um, which,
There weren't enough mistakes in spelling.
yeah, spelling mistakes or horrible math errors or 60-19 baseball parlays for 50 units each. It's like you can't have you can't have varying unit sizes in a parlay, dipshit. That's like a separate thing. But anyway, um, uh, Penny, Penny,
It's okay.
sorry, the dogs hear something in the backyard.
That's fine. We could let it pass.
Yeah, Madeline,
They were
hey
doing
girl, it's fine.
she's doing a good job before
Um,
that.
what's that?
She was doing a good job before that.
Yeah, they're just chilling. I mean, they're doing their job. It's just annoying because our floor, it's all stone floor. It just reverberates throughout the house.
Yeah.
So yeah, then Tweety, I guess after a few weeks, I don't know if he was back on Twitter yet, but people were sending screenshots from his Facebook. He was volunteering to be an Uber driver. And I don't know what it is about these people, this genus or this phylum of Twitter touts where everything they do is they're going to change the game. It's like, motherfucker, this is the same thing you've been doing for 8 years straight. You ain't changing shit. Like, they can't ever just be like, I'm going to do something. It's always like, I'm going to do something that changes the game. He's like, yo, I'm going to change the game. I'm going to be like Uber, but it's just me. I'll go get your paper. I'll pick up your dry cleaning. I'll bring you liquor. I'll do whatever, man. I'm about getting this money. Like, this is a new Christopher Jalen Love. It's like, oh my God, Tweety. Like, how much money do you owe to this bookie, dude? So those adventures are always fun. I said I wasn't going to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up anyway.
Yes.
I have a theory that Ben, and we all know who the fuck I'm talking about, Ben is not a real person. It's a gimmick. I don't know if Ben, the person, actually exists, but the stuff we see on Twitter is just, it's a tired gimmick. I don't get what the angle is. It's like just an old joke that's been beaten to death. I don't think he exists. As much as he seeks attention, he's never done any kind of live video streaming, and he's done live YouTube stuff before. He even had Hannah. I think Hannah had to or did a live YouTube video at some point. So why would he put Hannah, who isn't a real person? It's just some girl that he knows that he said was named Hannah. Do you remember Hannah at all?
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
That
she was
was
some moderately bangable
yeah.
chick up around where he lives that he put on a YouTube video, and she was basically going to be Hannah the Canadian cunt capper. I don't know, the Hannah Triple C, whatever the gimmick was. So Hannah's been on YouTube with her actual face, but not Ben. So just things just don't add up. No one can be that stupid. No one can that repeatedly burn through bankrolls or drum up attention for some contest that they quit less than a day later. So I don't know. I mean, I hope if he is a real person that it's a gimmick and he's not really that troubled and moronical, because if he is, it's pretty sad.
Well, so to mention him, he's like somebody who I think people have like messaged me about, like, have him on the podcast, like that's, and like also Tweety too, and I'm like, I not to say I have like extremely high standards because I'm having you on the podcast, but
That is true.
but I do I do want to have some kind of like I want to be able to have a conversation with someone, because I knew based on your tweets, I could tell based on people's tweets if I could have a conversation with them.
Sure.
And just looking at certain people's tweets, I'm like, well, no, I'm not gonna either help you promote what you're trying to do, or like, or you're just too stupid to like have on the podcast. Like, I'm not gonna. There's not gonna be anything gained, to record your voice for for an hour, or an hour
But
and a
think
half.
about the ratings, Brain.
Yeah, you know, I think about the ratings when I have the Ellen Boston podcasts.
Yeah, no, those are pretty good.
Like,
Do you think we'll
like
be able to get him on live video next time?
I would like to try to. He was actually going to be a guest before the whole March Madness thing collapsed, and I don't know if he would have joined by video. I don't know if he even knows how to join by video. He
That's
probably
true.
doesn't.
He's not very technologically advanced.
No, but I try to have some kind of like standard, and as low as it may
I don't know,
seem.
man. If you could get Tweety or Ben, I almost think you just do it just because as much time as we spend on this platform, just let them tell their side of the story and just kind of let them put it out there and just let people decide for themselves. I don't know. I've kind of come full circle on this. Like, it would definitely be interesting, and years, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, you'd be like, man, I could have done that and I didn't. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
block out an hour if you can get Ben to come on. But like I said, I don't think he's a real person.
yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised, if it was just somebody, doing some side thing. Do, are
So
you allowed to say if you have more than one Twitter account? Do you?
I have a crappy fake gimmick account that I made years ago, but I I never literally never use it.
Okay, because
Um, my account's already kind of an anonymous gimmick. So I don't really like the point of a burner account unless it was to make some jokes. I don't really see the point. But Andy, you know Andy, right? Andy and
yeah,
Will.
yeah.
Yeah, Andy Molitor has. I don't know how he does it. He has about 6 or 7 gimmick Twitter accounts, and so in some of the DM groups I'm in with him, he'll like switch in and out of his burners just to make like a joke. He has one burner that, because all those guys are tennis nuts. It's it's some town of Florida that hosts a tennis tournament pretty early every year, and he made a Twitter account for their Chamber of Commerce. That's one of his gimmicks. So every time that tournament comes around, he has like official people read him as if he's like associated with the city. So it's pretty funny. So could Ben just be someone's burner? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Okay. All right.
So
Well,
while we're on the topic of gambling Twitter, uh, are you in any Twitter DM groups for gambling? I think I asked you
I
this
used
maybe.
to. I used to be. the groups that I was in either faded out or they decided to do other groups that didn't involve me. So I don't really know which one is is the truth or not. But like I was in a couple that just like faded out. Um,
I'm too many, but I've left some over the years. But until I was in my first one, I didn't even know this world existed. And I guess in retrospect, it makes sense. But the last thing I'll say about gambling Twitter, so much of it happens in the DM groups. If you're not in one of these DM groups, it's almost like there's the regular internet and the dark web. Not that there's anything necessarily dark about the DM groups, but there's so much happening under the surface. It's like gambling Twitter is this giant iceberg, and there's 70% of it that's happening behind the scenes.
yeah,
The there are two DM groups, men in particular, that these are all dudes that I would go, like, if they're like, hey, let's all meet up in Vegas, I would go do it. Like,
yeah.
I consider them friends, almost like my real life friends that I text every day. So the groups are pretty cool. They vary in usefulness. Some of them are just complete retarded. Mafia man. Yeah, some of the groups aren't as value added as others, but if you're on gambling Twitter and you're not in any DM groups, there's just so much going on behind the scenes. You have no clue.
Yeah, and I think since I don't bet as much, it doesn't bother me that I'm not in these groups because I know some of them would be like some of the groups that I was in like would occasionally like, hey, I'm playing this like whatever, but I don't bet enough. I don't really bet at all. I mean nobody's really betting right now, but even before all this shit, like I wasn't really betting that much to like gain much value out of being in any of these groups. So going into like, have you actually met people from Twitter, like specifically because of Twitter?
I did. So shout out to Reed Rooney and the Bet Spurts team. Did you hear about the Bet Spurts weekend in Vegas last year?
I don't think so.
So there's this new company called Bet Spurts. Are you familiar with them?
I'm not.
Okay. So Bet Spurts is trying to be what the Action Network should have been. What they want to be is an app that if you, let's say you either you're tracking your own stuff or you one day want to sell picks. You create an account with BetSperts, and let's say you want to bet. Let's say you bet the Super Bowl. You want to say you bet the Chiefs. But let's say there was a scenario where in real life you bet it at -2, but it got down to pick, and you gave your pick out at -2, but then the game lands 1, and then later you change your bet to say, no, I gave out the Chiefs at pick, or I told you to get money line. What BetSperts is trying to do is when you make your pick, it locks in the line and no one can edit it. And so it's trying to be, they're trying to be the app of record for people to independently have their gambling records verified through an app.
Okay.
So let's say you're fucking Teddy Covers or something, and you want to say like, yep, like I've got, here's my last 3 NFL seasons as verified on BetSperts. You can trust me. That's their goal. So, for whatever reason, Vegas Refund.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got like 69,000, almost literally Twitter followers. Vegas Refund has like over the past few years, he continually invites me to DM groups. Like, I don't know why. I don't know if he thinks I'm funny or just likes me or just I'm just a personality or something. But I think he gave my name to the BetSperts guys, and they invited me to go to Vegas in September. So first NFL weekend, I went to Vegas, and it was probably one of the best weekends of my life. It was the funnest shit ever. They had a house rented. The BetSperts people had a house rented in the outskirts of Las Vegas, maybe like a 10-minute Uber to the Strip, had a giant pool. They had events on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I met probably about 40 or 50 people from gambling Twitter, and every single one of them was really cool.
Cool.
So I met I met Andy, I met Whale, I met Vegas Refund, I met the Bet Spurts team, I met Sandman, uh, I met Jay Creer, uh, I met. It's funny. I met some people that were in some of my DM groups that I never talked to much. Um, there's one guy I actually talk to him all the time now. Info over trends. He showed up Friday night. I was beyond shit faced because I actually drove from Tucson to Vegas. It was like an 8 hour drive. Get out, start pounding beer. I had worked all week. I had like done the thing where you work extra so that way you can take your Friday off without burning
Yeah.
PTO. And I remember this kid. I call him a kid. He's like, I don't know, probably like 27, 28. But this kid comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, I'm Info Over Trends." And I just remember him from his avatar. His avatar is freaking Otter from Animal House.
Okay.
And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And like I gave him a beer or whatever. And like the next day, I don't know if you ever had this where like you're blackout drunk and you meet someone for a second time and they're talking to you as if it's someone that you just talked to for like hours. I totally didn't remember talking to this kid at all. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like, wait a minute. I had to actually open up Twitter and I'm like, who are you again? He's like, dude, Info Over Trends. And then when I finally saw his avatar, I felt dumb because I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been talking to you for years. I just never had said his Twitter handle out loud. I'm like, shit, man, my bad. So, yeah. But other than me getting super drunk and the first night, no, it was a great weekend, man. Almost everyone was super cool. No, my wife's back home, but yeah, it was pretty damn cool. Hopefully, when all this is over, Madeline, sorry, dogs are going
It's
crazy.
okay.
When all this is over, I'm assuming there'll be more meetups in Vegas, and not that it's ideal, but I can drive there pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to meet some more people, especially the guys in my DM groups in real life, just to hang out or whatever.
Yeah, I think 100% of the people that I've met through Twitter, I think it's probably close to like a dozen, have been really cool. All in Chicago. I never met anyone in Vegas, but yeah, everyone's been cool to meet.
I almost came to your bachelor party.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I remember when you had the Twitter. I'm
Oh,
just horrible at planning in advance, which is why I ended up driving to the Bet Spurts thing. But I think by the time I told my wife about it, and she was like, "Oh yeah," and then like I finally looked up plane tickets, and I'm like, "Crap!"
yeah,
Like I probably should have made a decision like weeks ago.
yeah. It ended
So,
up just being me, George Sports, and DGen Capper, but it was a good time.
yeah, hey, why not, man?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know. And you
yeah.
guys went to like a Cubs game,
Well,
right?
we
And some
we
other.
well we went to a brewery near a Cubs game, so
Oh,
you could
okay.
actually hear the action before it made it to the TV. But it was still entertaining. Um, so let's transition into everyone's favorite TV show, the one that I binge watched in a week and a half, The Wire. Um,
Yep.
so so I have to thank my work because the last two shifts that I've been on, third shift and second shift, have been slow enough for me to binge watch like 90% of my watching of The Wire was during those shifts. So hopefully nobody from work is into. We're actually almost into minute 69 of this. Um,
Nice.
so I don't think anyone from work is listening to this, but if they are, then hopefully I still have a job after this. But well, they know because everyone does it. It's not like I wasn't doing work. It's just that during some of those later shifts, you gotta do something to pass time. So hey,
That's correct.
I was watching The Wire. So which was like a good thing and a bad thing because like I had just watched a good show in BoJack Horseman, which I don't know if you've ever watched that, but I actually really enjoyed that.
I've heard it's a really good show.
Yeah, and then like after watching The Wire, you're like, well, what the fuck do I watch? Because like everything is going to be a letdown after this. So like
Yes.
I ended up watching. I'm binge watching F is for Family right now, and then
How's that?
not too bad. It's not.
Good.
I like BoJack better, but anyways, let's focus on The Wire. Okay, so The
Okay.
Wire. I finished it in like a week and a half. Do you think people when they get to these binge watchings do you think like you should stretch out your enjoyment of The Wire? Do you think I did it wrong? Do you think I should have like waited like done it like over the course of like a month?
The reason why I don't like binge watching, I know that's the thing nowadays. I try to limit, especially my favorite shows, to one, maybe two episodes a week, because I find if I run too many episodes too close together, I like it's all over, then I can't remember the plot.
Yeah.
Like I feel like my memory of what happened in the show is inversely proportional to the time that I spent to watch each season. So if I watch the season over 3 months, I'm going to remember a lot of it. If I watch it all in like a weekend, I'm going to remember much less of it. That's just me personally.
Sure.
Um, but hey, I mean, you got it knocked out. You can always watch it again. So
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe no harm, no foul. Just a
Yeah.
personal preference.
Sure. So when did you watch it for the first time? Because I feel like if I would have watched it during its initial release, that I wouldn't have appreciated it just based strictly on my age at the time. Like I feel
Yeah.
like watching it right now is a lot better, especially with some of the themes that they have, especially in the last season. Even though, I think we both agreed, and we'll talk about this later about seasons. Season 5 was like the least good. It was still good. Is the least good, but like season 5 has a lot of relevance to today, like you were saying in our chats. So when did you first watch it? Were you watching it right when it came out, or did you take a little bit
I,
of time?
I wasn't. I didn't graduate college till December 2017 or 2007. Sorry. Um, and when I was in college, I was engineering undergrad, and I didn't have time like during the week from Sunday at noon till Friday afternoon. The only thing I did was work in school, and then Friday night and Saturday I'd party and hang out with my friends. I watched zero TV that wasn't like a football game.
Yeah.
So when I finally graduated, I had heard about The Wire. People had always said it was an amazing show. And so when I moved to Arizona in January of '08, I didn't know anyone here other than my coworkers, but they all lived different parts of town. So I'm like, well, I'm going to start watching The Wire. And I think I don't remember if I got it on Netflix DVD first. I think I did. I got the first DVD and it was the first three episodes. And by the end of the first disc, I'm like, holy crap, like how soon can I get the others? So I'd watch two or three episodes a weekend, all the way through the end. So I probably finished watching it in like 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
So 2008, I think at the time that I was watching it, when I started, I think maybe season 5 had just ended or was just ending. So it
Okay.
was right when the show ended, but it was, over a decade ago now.
So you spoke of this being based on books, which I didn't actually know. Is like separate books that this series is based off of.
Yeah. So the two creators of the show, Dave Simon and Ed Burns. Uh, Ed Burns doesn't do media, so most people will just say, "Well, David Simon created The Wire," because he's kind of like the mouthpiece for the show and the books and whatnot. But they both worked at the Baltimore Sun in the '80s and '90s, and they worked different beats. I know for a while, um, they worked a lot of crime stories, and they got a sabbatical in the mid '90s to follow a Baltimore homicide unit for a year. And so they both took off a year. They followed different groups in the homicide unit, and they wrote a book called Homicide. If you ever want to, like, I'm really interested in like how things really are. And you grow up, you think cops, if you murder someone, the cops are going to catch you. Well, a lot of times they don't, and then you're like, well, why? And so then you read a book like Homicide, and you're like, holy shit! Like a police department doesn't expand and contract its detective resources based on the number of murders. Like, let's say you're in a small town, you might have one cop that works murders, Well, if 4 different people get murdered in the same week, that poor bastard's going to miss stuff because you can't work 4 active murders at the same time.
Sure.
So these guys, they get assigned murders as they come up, and sometimes they come in slow and they have time to work stuff and interview people, and sometimes they don't. But they wrote this book, and I read all this after watching The Wire. It's a really good book, and I guess at the time NBC had a show called Homicide, a TV show. They hired them to help create and write the show. The show was moderately successful. I think it only had a few seasons. So they go back to work at the Baltimore Sun, and then eventually they leave to do TV full time and write books. So they wrote this other book called The Corner. So both David and Ed, they took off for a year, and they spent time on a drug corner, much like the same corners you see in The Wire. They just wanted to go, okay, well, what's this like? How do these people live? How do the people that are trying to catch them, how do they live? They were just embedded on a drug corner for a year, wrote a book called The Corner. It's an amazing book. It just, I don't know, it kind of, and all these books are very eye-opening for me. Growing up in the South, and it's like, you teach kids things to keep them away from drugs. Like, oh, anyone who does drugs is they're an idiot or they're lazy or whatever, or people that live on welfare, they're just lazy. Like all these narratives that get pushed. But then you go to a place like Baltimore and you see and a lot of these people they're following, they had factory jobs in the 80s. They have family roots in Baltimore where the factory's all shuttered. And so they're scrambling to find work, but there's just not a lot of options. There's no industry left there.
Yeah.
And so some of them can't cope. They fall into drugs, whatever. You can say it's an excuse, but I tend to think that if this part of Baltimore had a big ass factory for someone to go make freaking Teslas or Fords or something, that's what they'd be doing. They wouldn't be injecting themselves with crack or heroin on a daily basis. So they wrote these really in-depth, and then they got the opportunity to make The Wire, the TV show, after there's a mini series called The Corner based on the book that HBO put out. It's pretty depressing. I haven't watched much of it. By the time I tried to watch it, I was with my wife, and we started watching the first episode, and she's like, this is too depressing, so I never finished it. So they made Homicide, the TV show. They made Corner, the miniseries, and then they made The Wire.
Okay.
And it's kind of an accumulation of all this acquired years of knowledge of being a journalist and being embedded in the community. And the show is about the failures of the modern American city and the follies of the drug war and how they're intertwined.
Yeah,
and people will say things like, well, I think Breaking Bad is a better show than The Wire. And here's the principal difference, main reason why I disagree. And obviously this is subjective, but Breaking Bad, the writing's probably just as good. The acting's better. Really most episodes, it's a very small cast. You're not directing this giant ensemble with, 30, 40 ongoing character arcs.
Sure.
But Breaking supposedly is a teacher who, gets cancer, and he looks bad because he keeps coming to these forks in the road, and for whatever reason, he chooses the path that's less enlightened, if you want to say that, or he goes bad. But if you actually watch the show, every single time Walter White has to make a decision, he makes the worst possible decision. There's 2 or 3 ways for him to go, and every single fucking time he does the stupidest one, or the one that has the most hubris or whatever. And I'm like, this doesn't seem realistic. This is a very intelligent man. He's a man of science. And from the beginning of the show, every time he has to pick something, he picks the more evil path. And I get you only have so many episodes, like you have to complete your story arc in 13 episodes or whatever. It just seems a little unrealistic. And ultimately, what is the meaning of the show Breaking Bad? You could say it's an examination of a man who is forced into a hard situation. He makes repeated poor choices that leads him down this path. Okay, that's fine. That's great. The Wire actually has something that it's about. It's about something bigger. It's got a much bigger message. And they're both like top five shows ever. Like, I'm not going to argue
Yeah.
that. But at the end of the day, Breaking Bad, like, you know what happens at the end. Oh, well, like, sucks. Who gives a shit, though? Like, you don't walk away from that show going, oh, man, I was totally going to cook some fucking meth this weekend, but I'm not going to. I'm going to sell the Winnebago. I'm going to pawn my Pontiac Aztec, and I'm going to go start a real car wash. Like, you don't do anything with that information. I
Yeah.
feel like you watch The Wire, and it changes how you look at everyday things. And to me, that's why it's a superior show.
I get it. Oh, and it wasn't until season 5 that I realized both shows had that common character. The guy who's the journalism editor is the chemist who in Breaking Bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I
that
didn't
they had to
realize
kill
that.
that Aaron Paul. I forget his character's name. I'm blanking because I haven't watched Breaking Bad in like 4 years. That he had to kill because basically he was gonna take over the. It was either
Yes.
he was gonna get killed or they were gonna get killed.
You're talking about the
You remember who
journalist
I'm
who
talking about, right?
in season five that makes up the bullshit stories just to try to win a Pulitzer or
No,
whatever.
it was one of the editors, one of the guys in the background.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I forgot his character's name in both of the shows, but there was a connection. I did find that interesting
Yeah.
because I do want
So
to.
now that you watch The Wire, you're going to see Wire actors everywhere.
Yeah,
I was watching some random movie 2 days ago, and my wife's like, because I'll yell at the TV. I'm like, holy shit, that's fucking Clay Davis.
yeah,
So the real life guy is Isaiah Washington. He was playing some random like one scene character in some TV show I watched last week. And I'm like, that's fucking Clay Davis, which, she just sees some guy sitting behind a desk. I'm just sitting there like, I hope he says shit.
Oh no!
Shit.
Yeah, I have to tell you that like my favorite quote now. Like I mentioned my favorite quote like last week or a few days ago, whenever it was. But but hearing Clay Davis say "she,"
It's
like
so hilarious. And he's on all like I don't remember if it's the Verizon commercials. There's a series of commercials he's on, and I'm like, that's just running through my head nonstop every time I see him. It's awesome.
yeah. So let's see where we're at here with the outline. So you binge watched it multiple times, and if so, like, or maybe not binge is the right word, but have you watched it multiple times? I'm guessing you have, and like if so, like I'm guessing your opinion on like favorite seasons may change from time to time.
So I haven't. So I recently started watching season one again. I never watched it a second time, only because I'm trying to get my wife to watch it. I think I'm getting close, but I don't watch enough TV by myself because it was always sports, right? Like if I had
Mm-hmm.
time to myself, I'm watching basketball or football. So to find time to rewatch The Wire on my own, because I watched it and I think I met her like 2 months later, and we've been
Okay.
together ever since then. So I was always hoping I would watch it for the second time with her. So I've watched the pilot like 4 times now, and I've watched I think up to episode 8 in season one.
Okay.
So I haven't rewatched it yet, but I do want to, and I'm slowly working my way through it.
Okay. So I think you've stated your order. Let me just state my order, and this could change because I do want to watch it again, but it'll probably
Yes.
be like another. I'd like to give it some space. I'd probably watch it like next year, maybe at this time, because I feel like I need to space it out. I was divided between seasons 3 and 4 as the top. I feel like we have the same tiers. So three and
Yes.
four are in tier one. I have
Yes.
4/3. You have 3/4. And the second tier is 1 and 2, and a lot of people shit on 2, but I actually like 2 because of the industrial thing you were talking about. And the thing that actually stuck out to me the most about season 2 was when they were talking about the robots taking shit over, like or whatever that presentation was that Sabaka was
Yeah.
in. like really stood out to me. It was like the machines like taking over like the jobs and like
Yeah, because at the time you're like, well, you work in a port, of course they're going to automate things, but then we're
yeah,
probably 10 years away from a lot of people losing a lot of jobs due to robots. Like
yeah,
Amazon's trying to do it in their warehouses right now.
yeah. So that like I don't know. That's why I think like watching it now is way better than like if I would have watched it like 10 years ago because I wouldn't have had the same life perspective. Even though
Sure.
I don't have those life experiences, I could at least understand why those people made the decisions that they made. I so going into the tier two, I had 2/1, but like I could probably go either way if I watched it again. I could see myself liking 1/2. I think, like you said, it started kind of slow, but I understand that they have to set shit up. So
Yep.
like you have to see why Prez and all them are set up to do these like to do the wiretaps, and I was really fascinated with the whole like how they figured out the initial code of like what they were typing into the
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
pagers, like like even like the like the breakdown of like, oh, these guys are very smart, so like it couldn't have been complicated math, so let's see what they could have done, and just something as simple as like going a number over across the five is like
Yep.
I don't know. That was when I got into season one. Because like the first one, I wasn't into it as much in the first couple episodes, but I'm glad I stuck with it.
I will say the pilot is god awful. Like I get the second time I watched the pilot, I'm like, it's a miracle I kept watching this show. And four times now, and like I get it, and it's kind of exciting because it's like, okay, there's McNulty, there's Stringer, but it almost started too slow.
Yeah,
Uh, but whatever. It's done. Can't change it now.
yeah. So is there like as far as like anything that you remember watching from it? Is there anything that you would change about The Wire? Like I know that's like your favorite show, so maybe you like it the way it is, and you wouldn't change anything.
So last year, Jonathan Abrams, who used to work for Bill Simmons at Grantland, he wrote a book, Making of the Wire, and
Okay.
it's something that is basically for like 8 years they've been trying to book together, and he finally finished it and got it released. Um, if you read the book, The Wire, it's one of those things. Maybe it was too smart or whatever. It didn't really catch on with anyone until the show was ending. So every year, David Simon would have to go fight with HBO to get another season or to get more episodes. Like he constantly, every single season, because they were going to cancel it after the first season, he had to go fight for more things. Well, by season 5, he had been fighting with the network for 4 off seasons in a row. And he's like, look, to tell the story for 5, I need at least 10 episodes. And I prefer 13. And the network was like, you get 7. And that's why season 5, the whole serial killer plot line was really stupid. And they were, it ends up being a season where they rush things too fast, so it seems
Yeah.
unnatural. Like they're having to force plot because really you got to wrap the plot up by episode 6, so that you can say your goodbyes to all the characters in episode 7. So I would change, like I would give them a normal length season 5, and then maybe season 5. It's still a very good season of television, but by Wire standards, it's not great at all. So I would
So
change that.
so you mentioned 7, but I actually saw 10 on the site. So I don't know
Wait,
if
there, huh?
yeah, like
I could
yeah,
be wrong about that. I do
but
know
no,
that
but it
they didn't
was
get
it
as
was
many.
less episodes than other seasons. So like
Yeah,
there were a couple seasons with 12, a couple with 13, and then the
yeah. Maybe they asked for 13. They only gave them 10.
less.
Regardless, it was a little bit shorter
Yeah,
season, and they.
it was a little rushed, and yeah, the serial like it could have been because I was like some of it I was in the middle of working, so like that's why I would like to give it another watch, maybe when I'm not working, because like
Yeah, I'll eventually watch season 5 again when I watch the whole show, but it just kind of, I don't know. It was
yeah,
just kind of man.
it didn't stand out like a lot of
That
the
is
others did.
correct.
Um, so so as far as like, do you have like characters that are like under the radar that you had like that you were like rooting for? Because like I feel like everyone that like like any semblance of hope that a character had, like they were immediately killed. Like I feel like that's almost like the case. Like it's a Hollywood plot. Like you start talking about your future and then you get capped. Like it's like almost like a given. Do you have like anyone that stood out, either like a long-standing character, or maybe one that only lasted one season that like maybe some other people wouldn't have considered like their favorite, but or maybe under the radar?
So what I will say is that I never really liked McNulty. I get he's quote unquote the main character. I just don't like his personality. That's just me. I mean, the actor's fine, but he always just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Um, the characters, one of the ways that The Wire's such a top notch show, it was really good at taking characters in season one that were kind of despicable. The principal ones being Carver and Bodie, and it brings them on such a journey. We all know what eventually happens to Bodie,
Yeah,
but the last season Bodie was in, he had become almost, I don't want to say the heart of the show, but like he had gone from this big character that was just a jackass to like, holy crap, Bodie, like he's come such a long way. Like he had grown up, he had experience. And then Carver was basically just like he showed up, did the bare basics of his job. He had no guile about him. You know, he would just show up and beat up suspects and get simple arrests. He didn't think critically about anything. To where at the end of the show, he's finally like a thinking man, like acting like a detective, and he finally gets his sergeant stripes. And it was a really rewarding journey for a character in season. I'm like, I fucking hate this guy. So that those were kind of nice. I don't know because not too many characters are only on there for like one season. Cheese was always fun, and I think my favorite character that didn't get enough screen time was Weebay. I don't know. I thought he was cool as hell. I really liked Weebay.
which I'm trying to remember because I a lot of the character names blend into me. So like which one was he?
He was it Naaman in season 4? That was
Okay.
his dad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was one of the original Barksdale gang members. He spends most of the show in jail. That's why you don't see him much after season 1.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we have some listener questions to wrap this up, and obviously, take these with a grain of salt, but they're all of them are usually entertaining here. So Whale Capper was asking, can you ask if he ever called into the Smack Off, and did he have a take and did it suck?
Or do you know what he's talking about? Have you ever
I do not.
listened?
So that's yeah. So
Okay, so we both used to listen to the Jim Rome show a lot.
okay.
So back in the day, before really there were podcasts, I would listen to the Jim Rome show, and you could pay like $5 a month and listen to the archived radio shows on Jim Rome's website.
Okay.
So I would listen to every show literally 3 times. I'd get into work in the morning, I'd re-listen to yesterday's show, then I would stop and listen to the live show from 11 to 2 when I was at work in Baton Rouge. And then after the show would end at 2, I would listen to the either that day's show or the previous day's show again. So I listened to the Jim Rome show a lot, and he would have callers call in and kind of have like contests, like you call in and he'll let you talk, and it's called having a take. Like call in, give us your opinions about sports, talk smack about other callers, and then get off. You know, the premise was have a take, don't suck. And then once a year, he had a smack off where the entire radio show was by invite only callers, the best callers from the year calling in to have a contest. And the prize was nothing other than saying, like, I won the smack off. So no, I never called in the smack off. I never called in at all because to call into the Jim Rome show, you would be on hold from like 30 minutes to like 3 hours.
Okay.
I don't know how people did it, and I didn't have a job where I could do that. So I never did call in. I would email jokes into the show. I only got one read ever. I wasn't a very successful Jim Rome listener, I guess, but that was back in the pre-Twitter days.
Okay. All right. And well, actually, there's a couple from Sizzle, but I'm gonna read the ones from Spread a Stare first. Is he in your tennis chat? Because
He is.
his first one was, how did you get in the most prestigious tennis chat in the galaxy?
Okay, so he's talking about the tinnies or get the fuck out crew. So probably about, I don't know, it was like 3 years ago now. Uh, there was this guy who would always like my jokes whenever I post them on Twitter or whatever, and he'd retweet my stuff. And I didn't follow him at the time, but for those of you that are in the tennis world, his name is Big Ten Watto. He has a daily podcast now, but he would DM me. He's like, "Look, man, like I really enjoy your humor. I think you're funny. Do you want to join my tennis DM group?" I said, "I don't know, man. I don't really like tennis." And he's like, "Well, all right, we'll think about it." And then he was just such a good follower and always just showing appreciation for the jokes that I would post. But finally, I was like, "Okay, I'll be in your group." Probably me. So that was about 3 years ago, and I gotta say, these are like, having been in several DM groups, personalities of people always mesh, but these guys, for whatever reason, it's just a good group of guys. You know, we all bust each other's balls. They talk tennis. I don't really watch tennis, but you know, when we talk about a lot of stuff that isn't tennis, like right now, obviously there's no tennis, but
Sure.
it's a pretty good group of guys. So, Watto, if you're listening to this, thanks for inviting me to the DM group, man. I appreciate it.
All right. And he Spread a Stare. He asked why ASU is the best Arizona school.
So, ASU versus Arizona. So I live in Tucson, which is where University of Arizona is. Um, ASU is for people too dumb or poor or both to get into a California school. If you're a woman and have 8 or 9 abortions by the end of your freshman year, ASU is where you go if you want your family to visit you because they're still around. You go to University of Arizona, go Wildcats, bear down.
So, so you seem to have some preference in that argument.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. He also asked for an in-depth breakdown of your NBA live betting strategy. Is that sarcasm or?
Yeah, that is. So
Okay.
like I said, I'm not like I'll admit like whenever I'm wrong all the time or I make dumb bets or whatever. So I love to live bet NBA, but I I bet unders, and I have this false notion that let's say let's say I don't know, the Bulls are playing the Spurs and the pregame total is 216 and the two teams start off at the end of the first quarter. They're shooting 60% from three, 70% overall, and the live total is 242. I'm always going to bet that under. But the last couple of years, man, it's just gotten really brutal where you'll have two teams that'll shoot 60% through three quarters. I've bets where teams shot 60% from three for the game. I'm also in the NBA chat with Spread, and I'm always in there posting my live bets. Like I remember probably 2 years ago now, I think I lost a live under that was it was in the 270s. It was Warriors Blazers, I think, and just neither team could miss from three. They were not playing any defense, and I think I finally, because it kept going higher, and I bet like $5, $10. I just kept piling more on the under, and I think the game peaked at like 282.5 live. Threw $10 on that, but I lost like $70 on some stupid ass. Like literally, this is all while I'm like walking the dogs. I'm like walking the dogs through the neighborhood, and I'm like just watching the live lines, listening on my TuneIn app, listening to this NBA game, and I'm like, this is insanity. So yeah, my NBA live betting strategy is I need a better strategy.
Which I guess is why you began the podcast saying that you are or you were trying to give up betting to begin with.
That is correct. Yeah, I mean, some of the principles, the thing with my brain, and it's probably a lot of people, I can leave a game alone if I don't have action on it. But if the game's going on, as soon as I bet the game, let's say it's in the first quarter, I bet a live under, there's going to be this bug in the back of my brain until that game ends that I know that I have a bet on that game. And there's like that, you start that sweat,
Yeah.
that infamous gambling sweat, like till the game is over, I'm going to have that in the back of my mind, regardless of what I'm doing. And so then what happens is like 5 minutes later, it's up another 10 points. You already thought it was high before. So like, well, I'll just bet the same amount on this. There's no way they'll both lose, but then like 80% of the time they do. So
Yeah.
um, the right way to do it is probably like model the pace and then have an active thing where it's like, okay, well, here's the pace they're playing at. Here's the expected points per possession. So based on the actual pace and what I think the shooting percentage will regress to, here's what the live total should be. But I don't do any of that. I'm just some guy, with a phone who has money in an account, and I'm blowing it based off what the pregame number was, which may not have much correlation to the game that's actually being played live.
Yeah. Yeah. Because things change almost immediately depending on the situation. So,
Yep.
all right. The last couple of questions here are from Sizzle. He asked your favorite Fez screenshot, your favorite live on the line screenshot, and your favorite disguise employed when rebetting low limit props at brick and mortars.
My favorite was the first one, Fez, as in pheasant.
Favorite Fez screenshot.
Probably the famous one where he says that hockey is just soccer played on ice with an invisible
Yeah,
ball.
that's yeah. I think
That,
that was the DGen Tweet of the Year winner, or at least I know it was a nominee, but it
like,
was
I
at
think I
least
know what the guy's trying to say, but you're making a living trying to sound intelligent on sports, and that just sounds like something a drunk sorority girl would say before doing her eighth Jaeger bomb off of some, guy's dick or something.
so. All right, so favorite life on the line screenshot.
Who is life on the line?
It was in quotes. I don't know if I just assumed that you knew what that was.
Hmm.
I saw that there was a movie with that same title, but I don't know if yeah, we could just
Yeah,
pass on
sorry,
that.
Suzo. I'm
That's
not
fine.
sure.
And then
I'm not sure how to answer that
and
one.
your favorite disguise employed when rebetting low limit props at brick and mortars. As
Um,
if you need a disguise.
yeah, they're like, hey, good news, we just upped your limits again. Um,
Yeah, it's like a credit card. Here's an extra $3,000 to your limit.
yeah, it's so funny. It's like people complaining about being cut off. That's actually a goal. That should be your first goal. If you think you know what you're doing, is to get cut off at Five Dimes or Bovada or something. Because if you haven't done that, then you're either you don't know what you're doing or you're not practicing the things that you need to do to be a smart
Yeah,
better,
that should
like
be like
tracking.
a checklist item. Like, not to say that you want to get cut off everywhere because that destroys your living, but there should be at least one place you get cut off at if you're a really really good gambler.
Yeah. So I guess my best disguise would be um, a Manhattan finance bro who rides bikes a lot, has an overly fat cat, and drinks expensive wine. Love you, Pete.
I feel like that's a tennis guy.
Yeah.
Somebody in your chat. All right,
Yep.
I'm all about the inside jokes. So I'd like to
Yes,
be, as Michael Scott said, I'd like to be part of one someday. Um,
that's funny.
so, all right. Well, I think unless do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, just thanks again for having me on. If we ever want to do another episode, let me know. But it's been fun. Hopefully, I don't know who's gonna listen to this, but
Yeah,
any of my followers want to get to know me better. Hopefully, it's been entertaining, and I
yeah.
appreciate the opportunity.
I honestly have no idea who listens to this. So like, I'm always curious to see like if there's people who've listened to like every single episode or like or not or like 80 or 90% of them. I have no idea. Like, I don't.
So what I do think it's smart that you put them on YouTube, because you can see the play count. You're not
Yeah.
having to pay to host them. Because I think before your podcast, you were having to pay like wasn't much, but weren't you having to pay to host the episodes?
Well, I did. I mean, I had the website. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and like I was posting them through there, and yeah, it was. Yeah, I did have to pay like the host to like. I don't remember which place I picked. But I let the site expire because it wasn't worth. Even it wasn't that much, but it wasn't even worth that much money to invest. So I mean, maybe I'll
sure.
get to
But
that point again, but like I'm happy with YouTube like right now, and
yeah, eventually you may actually get some money from YouTube if, having your archive on YouTube and your listens for your older episodes, they're slowly climbing over time. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, we'll see. But
yeah,
I appreciate you taking a couple hours of your time to interview me.
yeah, no problem. It was enjoyable, and I didn't know what to expect because like you're very under the radar as far as Twitter goes. So like I don't know how many people really know about you. So I'm hoping that people will get some enjoyment out of this. So,
All
but
right. Well, I
either way,
appreciate it, man.
even if they don't like whatever they just they just wasted another 2 hours of their lives that they would have just done like jacking off like 30 times. So you know like like what does it matter? So like I just saved you from some some Kleenex, So so all right, well, thanks for joining once
All right,
again, and
Brian.
everyone once again, thanks for listening. Enjoy your quarantine. Stay safe. Get drunk. All that good
Go
stuff.
Tigers.
Everyone, good night. Love you guys. Take care. All right, thanks again, man.